God. And God's grace is God's favor. God's grace is God's favor. So Mary is someone who is full of God's grace. Okay, because God's grace is God's favor. We're going to look at one more place. It's also in the book of Luke. So turn a couple pages over to Luke chapter 7. Verse 47. Luke chapter 7, verse 47. And this is a story about a sinful woman. The Pharisees, the Jewish people at the time, bring a woman who has committed, I guess, adultery. Oh, no, sorry, that's another story. But this is a story where Jesus is in a tax collector's home, Simon's home. And the woman comes and breaks a jar and begins to wash Jesus' feet. Is that right? Okay. Yeah, in verse 38 it says, as she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. Okay. So again here it says, in verse 47, therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, for she loved much. But he who has been forgiven little, loves little. And in here is, where is grace? Or can you see the grace in here? In verse 1, therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven. So actually our forgiveness, like in the song that we sang today, is a big part of grace. And actually, if you have a chance, grace here in these three places are all the same word in Greek. In Greek, the Bible is originally written in the Greek language. It's a Shila word. But these are instances to help us understand more of what grace is and what it is like. So if we think back on our lives and how much God has graced us, how much God has forgiven us, and how much we have found favor with God. And thinking back to the first instance, finding favor with God, what is so special about Mary? Or why did she find favor with God? Or what happened? Or who is Mary? In chapter 1, verse 1. Jesus' mother. She finds so much favor with God that she gives birth to God's son, Jesus. Okay, and she's very, very special lady. Yes?
She found favor. The favor, can you give us some example of the synonymous?
Favor.
Favor. Because I got a little confused because a person has favor. God found favor in her means God liked her.
Yes. It's like the word favorite. If you are somebody's favorite, then you are a little bit more special to
In
them.
this place is also the same that God likes her. So
Yes.
God gave her the grace.
God's grace. God's grace. God finds favor with her. It is God's grace.
Yeah.
When you pick a favorite or when you are special to somebody, or God is special to each and every one of us, that's God's favor. But very good question. Does anybody understand? It's a hard question too. But sometimes we say, can you do me a favor? So we want people to do something for us, which is a little bit different than having somebody's favor. Sometimes we talk about, in the Old Testament, we talk about having the king's favor. Maybe like Esther. Esther came before the king, and usually if you come before the king, and the king did not tell you to come, then the king has the right to kill you. But when the king reaches out his scepter and accepts Esther, he's giving her his favor. So there's a little bit of power there.
So how do you say that? Because in this, it says that Mary has found favor with God.
Good.
How do you say that God likes her with the word favor?
God graces her.
Use favor.
Oh, using favor?
How do you say that
God shows
His
his favor to Mary. Shows his favor to Mary. That's a good question. God found favor. God shows his favor to Mary. I'll think about that. I'll try to get back to you.
So you
with somebody else. Right. So God gives his favor to Mary, or Mary is God's favorite. To find favor. To grace. But actually to grace is more, I think it's a little bit more active. And favor is a little bit more passive. To find favor. Right. I think that's better because when we talk about if you have favor to somebody, sometimes it's not fair. It's not fair. Right. So, but if it's passive, if somebody's showing favor to you, then it's not as negative. Oh, a very good hard question. Well, actually, we can say God shows his favor on us. That's okay. God shows his favor on us. God gives us grace. But probably we would say God gives us his grace. That would probably be better. Okay. Good. Good question. Anybody else have a question? Thank you. John 1:16. From the fullness of his grace. We have all received. One blessing after another.
好，我们刚才领受了这些神的话哈，接下来